Now we're moving forward into what's known as the late classical period. And basically we're dealing with about 431 till about, give or take, 330 BCE. And the Peloponnesian War starts in 431, ends in 404 with the defeat of the Athenians. And there will continue to be battles between the Athenians and the Spartans. The Spartans generally have the upper hand here. This crisis, by the way, will also give rise to philosophy. In 338, a man by the name of King Philip II comes to power and then unifies Greece. He is Macedonian. It's a little bit of an issue. He's assassinated in 336. His son Alexander III comes to power. Why am I talking about Philip II and Alexander III? Because Alexander III is Alexander the Great. So, kind of a big thing. Once Alexander the Great pretty much takes over and unifies the Greeks and then dies, we will have the Hellenistic, but we haven't gotten there yet. So we're dealing with the end of the Peloponnesian War till about 323. And we're starting with sculpture in the Aphrodite of Knidos. This was, and what we're seeing here is more or less what we have left of it before you start reproducing it. And what we have here is a female nude that was incredibly controversial at the time. It was seen as particularly sensual, and the people who originally commissioned it actually turned it down. So Praxiteles, the artist who creates it, will actually sell it to the Isle of Knidos. And we'll see why that became an issue. Here is recreation of the Aphrodite of Knidos. In the center is this recreation. On the right is, I would say, from behind, but that seems fairly obvious. And then on the left is how she would have been painted. Now, the Aphrodite of Knidos is one of those rare female nudes, and it is at ground level, which makes it a little bit more controversial. And we believe it's an Aphrodite because she is nude, but keep in mind, what are the men being depicted doing? They're throwing javelins and throwing discuses and holding spears and being heroes, all muscular. What is she being depicted doing? Well, she's getting out of the bath. We wouldn't imagine depicting Wonder Woman today with all of her Wonder Woman glory getting out of the bath. But that's what we're seeing here. The Greeks still do not have the respect for women. The Greeks outside of Sparta do not have the respect for women to give them these very heroic forms very frequently, assuming you're not Athena. And what we're seeing here is a development with that model, that male model that we've seen. First of all, you'll notice she's in a pose of contrapposto. She's stepping forward. She's covering herself. And that is a trend that the Greeks start that will continue all the way through to the 1970s, arguably until today. You can show breasts, you can show penises, but artists cannot show female genitalia. It's just the way it is, and it starts with the Greeks. We'll see it again throughout art history. We see that she has that twist to her, just like we saw with the spear bear, where you can almost draw this curved line down her body, and this makes the sculpture that much more interesting to look at, just like we talked about. You notice that she does have that tensed leg over here and a relaxed leg over here. We have a tensed arm and a relaxed arm. So picking up on some of those ideas that they've been using with the male figures, starting to apply them to women. But yet, when we look at her, she's not what we would consider an idealized woman in the Western world. She is built differently than what we would expect. Those ideas of the female image change much more rapidly than the male image and will change from society to society. Most of the ancient societies are looking for women to be strong and powerful, to be fertile, to be capable of giving birth, which is why our Aphrodite of Knidos looks like she could spend the day at the farm throwing hay bales just as easily as she could taking a bath or whatever else. And the picture on the left is to show you, now I've talked about the fact that these sculptures were painted, and this is extremely common. They would have put earrings on her, makeup on her, possibly painted the skin. We're never sure about the skin tone, but we know the makeup exists. And this painting would have been done over and over again because it's a water-based paint. It would be tempera paint and egg base. And that will wash off over time. We also believe the Aphrodite of Knidos belonged in a temple at one point. Although many of these sculptures are no longer found in temples, they were found on refuse piles and everything else. Some very famous ones, in fact.